Stanford University.
What a wonderful turnout. I'm absolutely delighted, but not surprised. Deborah Satz, everyone knows Deborah Satz. So delighted you're here, and it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague. And I'm thinking back to this lecture when we started it, now 5 years ago. The idea was, as I came to the folks at the Haas Center, there are some remarkable people at this institution that are reaching beyond the boundaries of the university, beyond the eucalyptus curtain, we like to call it, and doing some really terrific things. And there's some members of our faculty that are doing some things that many people don't know about. Some of us know about, and shouldn't there be a forum to have these faculty talk about these wonderful community-related projects, research, community activism. And I was thinking back about the lectures that we've had so far, some really unbelievably remarkable people. Michael Wald last year from the law school. We had Linda Darling Hammond from the School of Education a couple years ago. Ira Harkavy, who's the director of the University of Pennsylvania Center for Community University Partnerships. Don Barr talked about homelessness. I think Deborah knows. And so there have been some. Maybe with the exception of the first lecture, which was a questionable character. We really have some people that have done some terrific things here, and I've learned from each of them as they've talked about the ways they began to engage community service and include it in their life, not just as community service, but making that bridge between community and the university, which is not an easy thing to do. Now, when I asked Gabe Garcia and the staff from the Haas Center, as they asked me, who do you think should be the speaker for the 5th annual Haas Professor Lecture, it was maybe a nanosecond before, of course, Deborah Satz. And I have to admit, it's partly selfish. Now, I've heard about this terrific project that started some years ago. She involved a colleague, Rob Reish, and they went out and brought the humanities to some people, in this case, women at Hope House, recovering parolees who are struggling with recovery and trying to make a life for themselves. And when I heard about this, there were bits and pieces that I've never heard the whole story. So the selfishness is, if we invited Deborah, she would have to structure a lecture, reflect on it, and give us about 30 minutes, right? So, but that's only partly the reason. This is a wonderful story. This is a story of engagement, a story of commitment, of bringing students, taking students outside the confines of the university and engaging some people who, quite simply, have not had opportunity to engage in higher education. But you know, Deborah is now in line with these other remarkable people that have given this lecture. And let me just give you a little bit about her background so you can see why in fact she has engaged this work in Hope House. She is the Marta Sutton Weeks Professor of Ethics and Society, and Professor of Philosophy and, by courtesy, Political Science. She's the Director of the Bowen H. McCoy Family Center for Ethics and Society, a program that she's been involved in continuously since 1996 as Director. She attended undergraduate university at City College of New York. She hails from the Bronx. I knew I was dealing with a New Yorker here, although I'd never asked exactly where she was. First generation, and those of us that were the first generation to go to college, there are interesting and really important issues that we had to deal with, and so I'm not surprised when I heard that she told me that there is a connection between being the first member of her family to go to college and her connection to a community, a working class community outside the university. She graduated in 1978 from City College, and then attended MIT. She survived MIT and received the PhD in 1987. As I said, everyone knows Deborah Sass. As I looked at the list of her faculty affiliation with centers, I would wager the last little bit of money that I have in my retirement savings, is about $3,000, that there's no one that compares to it. Listen to this list. Center for Social Innovation, Graduate School of Business. Haas Center for Public Service. Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity, I know about that. John Gardner Center for Youth and Their Communities. Center for the Study of Poverty and Equality. Interdisciplinary Program in Environment and Resources, Public Policy Program, Stanford Center for Biomedical Ethics. I looked it up. She is involved in about a third of the entire programs around humanities and sciences. How she gets the time to be involved, I do not know. Areas of specialization in her scholarship: social and political philosophy, philosophy of social science, philosophy of economics, feminist philosophy. Let me just give you a few examples from a very long list of publications, very distinguished scholar we have before us today. A book that is forthcoming from Oxford University Press, should be out this year or next, titled The Moral Limits of Markets. She's also an editor of a publication from Stanford University Press in '06 on taking ourselves seriously and getting it right. I've got to read this book. This sounds really intriguing. And then with dear friend and colleague Rob Reich, a book that's also forthcoming from Oxford University Press, Toward a Humanist Justice, Essays in Honor of Susan Hogan, colleague from political science. Also published over 24 articles. So she's juggled a lot of things: family, the scholarship to be a distinguished chairholder at Stanford, and then engaging in this work outside the university. Just a quick mention of, there's a very long list of awards and fellowship. I'll just mention a few here because I think they're important to note. Margot Sutton Weeks Faculty Scholar in 2007-08. The Walter J. Gores Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2004. This is the university's highest award for teaching given at commencement. She's been at the Stanford Humanities Center twice, 1990, 91, and 2001 or 2. She is the recipient of the Gordon and Daly Patty Faculty Award from Stanford in 1997, 98. And in 93, 94, she was the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Visiting Professor in the University Center of Human Values at Princeton. So I wrote this question down just as I was thinking about having the opportunity the first time to actually look at the CV. You know, we often don't do that with colleagues. It's an eye-opener and it's humbling. But I wrote this question. I'll share it with you. What does a scholar do when she takes her skills and ventures into a community outside the university and works with those who didn't have the opportunity to attend an institution of higher education, but who themselves become students of the humanities? We're going to hear that story, and please join me in welcoming Professor Brooks.
Thanks, Al. Everybody can hear me? I've got a pretty loud voice. I know some of you have to rush out, and I won't be offended when there's this mass exodus around 5:15, but I'll try to get to my main points early on. I do have to begin by acknowledging a number of people in this room, Mimi Haas and her late husband Peter Haas, for their unstinting support of the Haas Center, the Haas Center staff, Dave Garcia, Suzanne Abel, Jackie Schmidt-Posner, Karen Cotterman, Al Camarillo, all the students and faculty who've worked with me on the Hope House Scholars Project, many of whom are in this room, Joan Berry, who's been the coordinator and lifeblood of the program and keeps it running, and especially Rob Reich, who's sitting over there, and co-founder